Yeah, again, there's something else, and I think that's really our mission. Get context, know more. Give context. Allow people to understand things better, because the basic, kind of an obvious thing is that if you see how governance is in the Western Cape, as a human being, as a South African citizen, you see governance elsewhere in the country, you're going to vote for the people who are governing the Western Cape. It just makes sense. And yet it doesn't happen. When you see, as I quoted right in the beginning, the Morningstar top 3 fund managers, Fairtree, Counterpoint, 361. If you took their percentage of inflows into those funds, and I'm talking about SA equities versus all the other SA equity funds, it's probably a very small percentage. So there's got to be a reason why. In politics, I guess it's to do with emotion and history, but in financial services, marketing.
I think about that a lot, because I looked at what Penn is doing and Cy Jacobs and Fairtree guys, and I'm saying, why is the money not pouring into those funds? There are other funds as well. They're shooting the lights out. They're outperforming everybody. First of all, one is a sense of myopia amongst investors. They actually don't care. They trust the advisor. They see the advisor once a year who says to you, don't worry, it's all regkom, don't worry, byt vas. And they trust the advisor. But the advisor has a vested interest somewhere along the line. I'm quite sure of it. So there's ignorance, there's myopia, there's biased advice, because you don't want to advise someone, listen, I think you might take your money offshore. That could mean that money could land up with Templeton or Fidelity or BlackRock, who, by the way, yesterday published a piece on South Africa saying they totally not interested in SA equities, but that's another debate. So there's a lot of vested interest driven by advertising. A lot of the tied agents dare not criticize their funds and their performance. They will be booted, they'll be fired, and then there's a lot of incentives that are hidden in the industry that ensures a captive kind of audience who are either ignorant or don't care. And I think they should become care, because they're not building any personal wealth. The media also plays a role, like with the vaccine and the COVID. They are kind of, I've seen it, that they have to spew out a certain narrative which satisfies their big advertisers. I mean, I'll give you one example, and I was not going to mention it, but I think after Alec left MoneyWeb, we had already planned the sponsorship of the series of seminars like this called SA Quo, and we had a couple of speakers. We had the late Mike Schischler on board, who's a straight shooter. He doesn't take SHIT from anybody. We had France Fournier and another couple of speakers. And the prevalent or the prevailing narrative was SA is heading towards trouble. Everything happening now was kind of ventilated and discussed at these seminars. Although MoneyWeb was the sponsor, the editor bluntly refused to publish one single word that was said at the conference. He said, it was not my contract, I'm not interested. Alec picked up some of the content and published it, although there was no incentive for him. He said, it's important enough for my audience to know this. So that is what I'm talking about, of the certain media people will not talk badly about South Africa, come what may.
Right, there's time for questions. How many microphones? 1, 2 microphones? Hands? There's a hand there.
Good morning, Mr. Heystek. I'm Sean Marais. You are not very positive about South African listed property. And I would just like to know your comments. The prices where they are now is supposed to be fair value. If you can just comment on that, please.
I saw something 2 days ago. I can't remember who it was, but it was a top fund manager. I think it was Warren Buffett was quoted. He says he always hears this thing about fair value. He says, define fair value for me. My issue with the property sector started in 2017, 2016, when, first of all, the market was totally overblown. The valuations were absolutely crazy. I mean, there were cap rates of 6%, which never existed, plus And from then, at that point, we moved out of listed property. Have not had a cent for our clients. So, and we save them between 40 and 60% losses. The market at the moment might represent fair value. I don't think it fully reflects what's going on as far as the infrastructure is concerned, the collapse of the municipalities, the cost of electricity, and you just simply need to read the quarterly or annual statements from these fund managers, and you pick up something very worrying. A lot of office buildings in Sandton, 25% are empty. Rent reversions as they come up are down, not up. Yet the cost, electricity, diesel is going through the roof. So some people are trying to make out the case for value. I'm saying it might happen, but what is the risks involved? That's why I said this is a game of risks and returns. Now, considering the risks of a further meltdown in listed property, I cannot recommend it to my clients. I say there are better investments. Enhanced income funds are beating property funds hands down for 7 years now. Why would I want to take money out of a predictable 8% yield for my clients and put it into something that may or may not give them a 10, 12, 14%? That's where the decision comes in as to the risk and the reward. And I don't see it yet. I don't think that the listed property has gone through its cycle, absorbing all the incredible attacks on it as an investment entity.
While we're waiting for the next question, Magnus, some months ago you started warning about greylisting. Again, for context, during the lockup for budget this year, I posed that question it wasn't actually me, somebody else posed it before I could, to the Department of Finance and the Finance Minister. And in essence, the response was, you could see between the lines, yes, we will get greylisted, which then came a day later, but we have got a request in to fix the last 5 of 20 problems, and that's going to be in June, and so the greylisting will only be between now and June. So after June, we're going to come back strong again. I know your thoughts on this have been a lot more extreme than most people who've been looking at greylisting, but since the time that you started talking about it, the rand's been pretty weak. Is there a connection?
That's right. The rand has kind of already absorbed a lot of the future damage. So it moved very briefly, very sharply up from 17 to 1850. That's a big drop for any currency. I read this morning, and I was not aware of it, but Financial Mail had a piece this morning, which it's still there. It's not gone yet. They're saying that the cabinet was warned in 2014 that this greylisting is becoming an issue. They were warned then that our mechanisms to control money and to identify connected people is creating a problem for the rest of the world, because they were looking at what's happening with the Gupta saga, the money flowing around. It was rejected by Cabinet because they felt they do not want to publicize the ultimate beneficiaries of trusts and companies. So this is like the Eskom thing again. They were warned long time ago. But it didn't suit the ANC because there was too much money flowing around, and the minute you have to publish ultimate beneficial ownership, you could be exposed, and they didn't want this. So they were living in denial, postponing it, hoping it'll go away. Well, here we have greylisting, and again, one hopes sincerely it will be sorted out quickly, because if we don't, the IMF has done a report, and it's quite a lengthy document. I did read it. They warn that if it's not fixed, it could lead, I'm not saying it's going to, but it's the IMF have studied this, and they've said, on average, a country loses 7% of its GDP in capital outflows. Think about that. If they're even remotely correct, and we don't fix the problem, the next 2 to 3 years we can see a massive outflow of capital, nothing coming in, and you can make up your mind what it'll do to the rand. Now, that's just a scenario, but other people who spent time analyzing this problem saying it could happen. Now, there's your question of probabilities. I think you should take note of it. Go and Google IMF greylisting, find the original document. You can find it on the website of, what is that? One of our fund management companies will come to me now. It's all there for you to read. Future Growth. Future Growth, somewhere 6 months ago, just had a mention about this report. Go and Google it. Make up your own mind. Don't listen to me. I'm just saying it's another risk factor that I'm personally considering, and I'm advising my clients there could be a bloodbath in the currency market. It's not a forecast. It's a probability. And let's hope I'm wrong, and the IMF is wrong, but I'm saying it could happen.
But it's interesting. I didn't know about the 2014 thing, but that would not surprise me from what we saw in the Zondo Commission that at the time it was a Zuma administration, and there's no way that they were going to address it.
Yeah.
But an update on that was in 2021. FATF doesn't just act in isolation. They have been working with Treasury since 2021. So if you think of it, we've had 2 years to fix this. There were 20 issues that were highlighted, 15 of which have been fixed. But the 5 that haven't been fixed are the problem. And I guess that's where it comes to disclosing ownership of trusts, etc. And often we as citizens look at these things and we think, well, that's way above our head. Why should we worry about laws and greylisting and, but it unfortunately has affected us, and it is something that we need to occupy our minds with. Maybe getting back to that good news filter that you spoke about earlier. No one wants to talk about it because it's bad news.
Well, it can affect many people in the sense that many people have already got some offshore investments. They might need that money back in South Africa for whatever reason. Suddenly, there's a red light. Mr. Jazz is moving money. He's a South African from London back to South Africa. There will be enhanced due diligence. That's going to hit everybody. We're already being faced with this with our transactions in countries like Guernsey, Mauritius. They now want proof of funds. Now, that sounds like not serious. They're basically asking for an audit of where your money came from 10, 15 years ago. That's how ridiculous it can become. They want hard copies, sign off by a commissioner of oaths and attorneys, etc. It's going to become very, very difficult to move money around between. For instance, I have a daughter in London studying art, and I pay in pounds. Now I move my money from one account to another account. I know I'm going to get a call very soon saying, where does this money come from? Prove it. It's going to affect everybody. Flow of money between banks, from your offshore account here, vice versa. So prepare yourself, ladies and gentlemen, for much more enhanced due diligence. It's going to take longer to get money back. Not going to take a week or 2 weeks. It's going to take 3 months before they're entirely satisfied this is clean money.
Afternoon, Magnus, Mark. 2 questions. One, you speak about offshore. Which domains would you recommend? Secondly, what asset classes would you recommend?
Well, I think Russia is very cheap at the moment, but I think the growth can be explosive. You know what? Once you decide to take it offshore, my view is I'm not a fund manager. But I'm a manager of fund managers, if you know what I mean. So our job is to go and spend a lot of time researching fund managers that we think have performed, that we talk to them. And as a result of ALEC, we made contact with Sean Pesh a long time ago, before he became more popular in South Africa. And we liked what he said as an example. I'm just giving that as an example. Once we identify a fund or an asset class, we try and do research and say, who are good managers of that type of asset class? I can use biotechnology as an example, healthcare, it can be commodities, it can be anything. So there's a lot of research, and then you start looking at the morning stars, and then you start talking to the fund manager. We had 3 Zooms with Sean and our team before we said, we can now include Sean in our choice of funds, because we've done our due diligence. We can honestly tell an arbitrator that we've done our homework. It's no guarantee. So to answer your question, and I'm not getting paid to punt this, but Sean is doing exceedingly well. But we will keep track. There are other fund managers. Terry Smith from Fundsmith. Great track record. So we tend to stick to a global kind of approach to offshore investing, and then they will have some pockets. We call it the satellite approach. I'll give you an example. One other commodity producing country that is still doing better than the JSE is Australia. Australia, the last 10 years, in fact, the last 30 years, has beaten the JSE by about 5% per annum over that period of time. Because they don't have electricity issues, they don't have railway issues, they don't have labor issues, but they're selling the same product. So their profits, to put it in a very simple way, are the same product that we're selling. They're making much more money because we have all these added issues. So to answer your question, we'd like a general type of approach. We tend to like smaller fund managers who can be more mobile in the market. And then we will go and research, based on the flow of news, what we think can do well, whether it's technology again, whether it's the healthcare funds. Another example, nobody ever talks to Japan about Japan in South Africa. Japan has been a phenomenal place to put your money in the last 10 years. One of the few stock markets that did not crash last year. It just went straight. So we have an exposure to Japan. We could be looking at listed property at some stage, but I hope I've answered your question. So I can't give you one fund manager or one asset class. That's above my pay grade. But there are very good fund managers out there. They do the choices. We track them against other benchmarks.
Last question. 2024, Rainbow Coalition comes to power. DA-led government takes over in South Africa. Would you change your mind about this country?
Absolutely. That will be one of the things. If that happens, what's the old saying? When the facts change, you change your mind. What do you do, sir? Of course, if there's an improvement and we can see the benefits flowing through immediately, it'll be a sign that we can now start investing. Like you've experienced what's happening in the Western Cape. I mean, my wife and I were fortunate enough to buy a couple of properties in the Western Cape 5-6 years ago. It's astounding how those properties have gone up in value. When we look at our property values in Johannesburg, where we live, and we live in a fantastic place. But we live in a suburb called Dainfern, which is on the golf course, and it has not gone up 1 cent in 10 years in my estimation. It's the same price. Cape Town prices have doubled in 5 years. So you can just see what the flow of money does. And you can see it when you go down to the Paarl or Hermanus. You are in another country. And it comes from the top. It comes from the governance. It comes from the municipality.
Magnus, Goss, last August when we were here, you weren't here, unfortunately, but Piet Viljoen was eager to update us on the emotional contest between you and him.
Sorry, my mic is busy backing up. Yeah, sorry.
As to whether onshore and offshore was better. It's a relatively short snapshot in time, but what's the score at the moment?
Well, in defense, my lord, you got to understand the context. Again, the context. Here it comes back again. It's like a hospital pass in rugby. I mean, somehow throws you the ball and you got seven big rugby acts coming down at you. The gent who sponsored this competition in November 2021 decided he wants to run this competition. So the timing was not particularly good, as far as I'm concerned, because literally a month after that, technology took a 20% dive, and commodities where Piet's were invested went up by 20%. So immediately there's a 40% discrepancy. So bad start. However, last year, when I done it Piet's year, Piet's gone neutral. Turns year to date is -1. It shows you how quickly the funds. I've changed my portfolio over time. It now does consist half of Randmore and then the Brentis Global Equity Fund, small portion of equities, and suddenly the gap is narrowing. So Piet has not grown in a year because of commodities. My portfolio is now catching up. I don't know what the exact number is, but the graph's already looking very good. The 5-year race, Peter's a brilliant fund manager. It's going to be very difficult to beat him. But I've called in the heavy guns. Sean, where are you? Well, I hope he's researching markets. So Sean has had, in fact, I compared Sean, the Randmore Fund, with Peter last year. Sean is up 37% and Peter's down 1%. 38% swing in 1 year. So what I'm saying is you've got to change your investment strategy, and things can change very quickly in investment markets. So the gap is narrowing. I hope I answered your question, Mickey.
Mick, it's a little bit like a horse race. Magnus lost the break, lost many legs, but now is it rushed up, faded, or not? So we'll see. It's after we're about 250 meters into a 1,000-meter race, and at the we'll see in the next couple of months. We'll do an update. We do one every 6 months, but last time, that's why Magnus said his microphone was maybe not working so well.
Good morning, Magnus. My name's Paula Hill. You mentioned you have property in Western Cape. Could I ask you if it's commercial or residential?
Well, in fact, it's both. I have a little office block for our company, so it's done okay. It's not spectacular, but I did buy, and I was very lucky. We bought 1 or 2 apartments in Baldevie, which is quite spectacular, and because it was ahead of I kind of sensed that there's going to be a rush of people moving down from Joburg and Pretoria to the Cape. So that was one reason I bought. And secondly, many people were surprised when they saw what I bought. I bought the smallest 2 properties in the entire state. I'm not joking. 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. They have doubled in value. Why? And it's ironic. The Joburgers arrived there with their 6 or 8 or 10 million rand thinking they're going to buy a mansion. Ain't going to get a mansion. So suddenly the smaller ones are the ones that people want. They want to be in Baldevie because it's quite a fantastic estate. They just can't afford the big properties. I mean, the property prices, I was there last week. I could not believe what people are paying. Not only from South Africa, but from all over the world. I mean, people are buying land for 15 million rand and building a 50 million rand property. I mean, there's another gentleman who spent 150 million rand on his house. That's madness. I'm not in that market. But to answer your question, we bought in Baldevie, and that has done extremely well. So if you are wanting to look at, for whatever reasons, the Paarl, Franschhoek, Stellenbosch triangle, I think is going to continue to do well because the number of South Africans moving down to the Cape, driven by safety, security, and the kids, they're very good schools, I think that will continue.
Hi, Magnus. Barry. Maybe a curveball question, maybe a question you don't want to answer. There are a number of people who are members of the BizNews tribe who probably have medium-sized businesses, family-owned businesses, probably up to around somewhere of a value of somewhere between 50 and 100 million. What advice would you give to them as far as preserving the value of their businesses, considering what could happen in South Africa at the next election? Is it a good time to realize some of that capital? In other words, sell a share of your business? Should we maybe look to sell to somebody overseas? What sort of advice would you give to a 73-year-old who has 90% of his assets invested in his own business?
That is a problematic question. It all depends on many other factors. It's not a yes or a no, sell or don't sell. It depends. Is it the family business? Are there other family members in the business? Can they run with the business when you're not there? Do you want to sell? Are you selling for health reasons? You're selling for capital? That is a very long question, and until you get to an answer. And we have dealt with that with some of our clients. I'll give you an example. A family from Bloemfontein came to see us about their property portfolio, 5 years, 6 ago, and we looked at a substantial property portfolio. I'm talking about commercial flats, Bloemfontein. I did some work, we did some extensive work, and we advised them to sell. Well, they did sell, they got a good price, and they externalized most of the money. I met the gentleman not so long ago, and he said to me, I thank you so much, because those same buildings are back on the market at half the price. And he's doubled his money offshore. So it all depends, but their objective was the kids are going to go to Europe, they want to go along and get some capital. So I cannot give you a right or wrong and do this. It's something that you need to consider with your accountant, with your advisor, with yourself. Is it the right time to sell? Will I get the right price? Who do I sell it to? How will they pay me? Will it be enough to sustain my lifestyle relative to what your business did give you? Remember, in many cases, we found that the monetary value that a business generates to family business is much higher than the price that you can get. So I might say, no, don't sell it. If it's a good business and you feel confident it'll carry on being a good business, keep it. Don't just sell in anticipation of something that may or may not happen. I think that would not be smart. There must be other reasons, compelling reasons, health, immigration, kids overseas. But do not rush and sell a good family business. Many people will live to regret it.
Magnus, thank you very much.
Thank you.